Welcome to the Subconscious Elements Podcast, a podcast where we cover all things spirituality, whether it's movies, books, legends, myths. And today we're going to talk about a very awesome movie, like the movie if you're a man that loves like competing. Every guy I know that does martial arts has seen this movie, but it's Gladiator. It's that classic revenge story of a guy who has everything, loses it all, and makes his way back to the top. And I'll let Tori, my co-host, kick it off.
So Gladiator was released in 2000, and it was a game changer for the movie scene. It not only won 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Actor for Russell Crowe, it also paved the way for the historical drama genre and inspired many movies like Troy and 300. So if you need a refresher, the plot starts out with the Roman general Maximus Decimus Meridius, and he is everything great that you want to see in a leader. So he's loyal, honorable, and virtuous. And the emperor is getting older and needs to choose a successor. And in doing so, he chooses his leader instead of choosing his son, who is rightfully the heir of the throne. And this antagonist's name is Commodus. And this movie follows the journey between jealousy and revenge. And Commodus finds out that his father is, in a sense, going to betray his son and kills him, and then exiles Maximus, and he eventually escapes, becomes enslaved, and forced into fighting in the arena.
The Colosseum, and there he wins over the people by being the ultimate gladiator, and then actually steals power from the emperor, which is, if you're a martial arts competitor, it's the thing to do. One of the favorite quotes by a lot of us is "Are you not entertained?" One of our good friends, Haisam Rita, submitted Cyborg at ADCC with just an awesome armbar in 30 seconds. Everyone stood up and was roaring, and he was just walking around "Are you not entertained?" And it was so awesome. I have goosebumps every time I think about it, and I didn't even do it. I just being in the crowd and seeing him do that. But it's one of the most epic things a human can feel is to be a warrior, put on a show, win the crowd over, and then just have that thing of is this not what you wanted kind of thing. It's pretty dope.
Yeah, so he's very reluctant to fight in the beginning as being enslaved, and eventually he proves himself as the top dog in fighting, and he befriends one of the other characters. I believe his name is Joba, and Joba helps him along in his journey, and he changes the mindset of all of the enslaved gladiators by teaching them that it's not every man for themselves, but rather we have to work together in order to conquer what's going to happen next, because they don't know what to expect, and they're put to challenges that are very difficult, and almost always they're at a disadvantage. So him having the leadership skills, he kind of at least gets the majority of the people on his side and teaches them that they can win.
Yeah, they have the initial mindset is everyone's out for themselves, to pretty much just watch out for yourself and try to survive. And there's one guy, I don't remember his name, but he's the big, strong, handsome one, and even though everyone else starts to team up, he's F that, I'm doing my own thing, because he's a veteran. He's the one that's in charge originally of indoctrinating the new ones to see how good they'll be. And even when Maximus tries to get them all to a team, he's nah, I know what to do. And then Maximus ends up saving his life. He almost gets ran down by one of the chariots, I believe, and Maximus saves him and then wins him over to the team. But it's you see that a lot where, especially when conditions are tough, you go into this survival mindset. And when you're in a survival mindset, the only thing you can worry about is yourself. And I remember when I was training in the Marine Corps, that's like the biggest thing we would train, especially when we worked martial arts, is to, we would say, like, don't go internal. Like, don't just think about the suffering that you're going through. You want to come out of that. And when you do, when you think about everyone else, you're not worried about your own suffering, which then makes it easier to perform and do the things that you need to do. But yeah, that's a pretty dope moment for Maximus, where he's able to use his the leadership that he got from being a war general to lead a bunch of ragtag group of slaves and gladiators to actually win and live.
Yeah, that's definitely a excellent concept to pull from. Once you can see the next level of thinking, you can become aware of more than just yourself, and then you can actually improve the situation around you, improve the team around you, instead of going tunnel vision, because you can see that a lot in people where they're barely aware of what's happening around them. They're just trying to do what they can, which ends up usually being the bare minimum. So exceeding the expectations.
Yeah. There's a lot of different like concepts that are in this movie. Like, we could spend an hour on this movie and still not touch like all the different stoic virtues, the concepts from the way the movie's laid out. I mean, we could go on forever about it, but there's definitely some key ones, and it really is trippy when you start to see all the different things that they laid out in this movie. You're like, it wasn't like, we kind of picked up on some things while we were watching it, but then when we went back and I actually started studying, you're like, dang, no, that did happen, and I can't believe that that's what he was alluding to. But like in the very beginning, it shows like the layout of the war, and in the very beginning it shows like these beautiful scenes of like a bird and the wheat grass, and it's like, oh, and then it zooms out and they're actually about to go to war, and they're essentially showing this idea that what you're looking at, the attitude or the situation, can change based on the lens that you're looking at it from. Like, and in this particular aspect, it went from, it was beautiful, super zoomed in, because it's showing Maximus and he's like noticing all these like little beautiful things, and then it zooms out and they're in a war. And obviously you can flip that, and I think you can apply it to all our lives, but like one of the ones I was comparing to is like Houston. Depending on what scope you look at Houston, it can either be like the most awesome thing or the most terrible thing. Like, in some sense, you look at Houston and it can be kind of gross. There's like some definitely like gross parts of Houston. You can see it. Sometimes it's like really smoggy here and the air doesn't smell that great. There's obviously like a lot of homeless problems and a lot of poverty problems here. But then at the same time, so I was kind of like thinking of like how it can look bad like from a zoomed out perspective. But then when you zoom in, like I took a walk last night, and man, the Heights is just so awesome. Like, it really is, super pretty down here. And I mean, there's like a lot of people, but you can still see that there's like actual effort into making the Heights like a cool place to like be outside. And like even something as simple as like putting lights up on a tree, and having like a nice walking area to go down. And there's like, I mean, how many places in the world can you walk down the street and get ramen, 24/7, or stop and get some late night ice cream, or go on a walk with your dog, or, go out and just be about. Like, you can go walking here in the Heights and it be a nice walk, And so it's just like that trippy contrast that you can have sometimes. And then obviously it can be reversed too, where you can look super closely at something and you can think about how bad it sucks and how annoying it is. But then you can zoom out and you could just be grateful that that's your problem,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, my friend, he loves to say, if you put everyone's problems in a bag, you would almost always wish for yours back.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no matter how bad you think you have it, there's always someone that has it way worse.
Yep.
And just be grateful that these are the problems that you're dealt with, and do your best to overcome them.
Yes, I experience that a lot when I go to a men's group. So I go to a men's group once a month. Well, once every 2 or 3 months. They have it once a month, but I can only make it every couple months. And that's one of the biggest themes for me is like, man, I think I'll be going through some stuff or whatever, and then I hear what everyone else is going through, and I'm like, I would not trade my problems for anyone else's. Like, I'm glad to deal with what I got to deal with. And, you know, if you really think about it, that's such a profound thing, because we can get caught up in this idea of like, oh, what does that person have, or how did they get that? Everyone else has all these things, but I don't, and no one knows what I'm going through, and no one could do what I'm doing, this kind of thing. But if you really get the chance to really hear what people are going through and what their lives are like, you'll just be happy. You just literally be like, you know what? I don't want to deal with that. It's like, and it doesn't even have to be like more difficult or anything, but you could just be just this idea that like, whether you believe it or not, you chose what it is that you're going through. And that's actually one of the biggest quotes in this movie too. It goes, "Nothing happens to any man which he is not formed by nature to bear." And it's kind of just going over this principle of like, it's like, I think it's in the beginning before all the bad stuff starts to happen to him, but it's this idea that we can't always control our situation, but we can control our mind and attitude. And so that kind of foreshadows into it, because then they kill his wife and his son. So what happens is that Marcus Aurelius decides to pass the title of emperor to Maximus, and not his son, but ends up dying before it could become official. And his son ends up killing him, because he tells his son that he doesn't want him to be the emperor, and he ends up becoming so distraught over it, he kills Marcus Aurelius. And back in those days, if you became emperor or king, you would automatically kill anyone that would have a claim to the throne, right? That was just the way business was done. And generally they would kill the whole family too, because they wouldn't want the heir to grow up to try to come back and attack you. So yeah, so anyway, he becomes emperor, goes to kill him, and Maximus is able to escape. He tries to go save his family, but ends up, what do they do, like knock him out? Or he gets there afterwards?
He finds out that they're dead. He goes there,
right,
finds out they're dead, and then because he was so badly hurt on the journey there, and in the battle of escaping, he ends up becoming enslaved.
Well, he passes out.
So someone,
right?
Picks him up.
Okay,
yeah.
Right. That's how they ended up not killing him. So yeah, he escapes his execution, takes a wound, rides straight there as fast as he can, finds out they're dead, and passes out from all the blood loss. And then they capture him, and he ends up becoming a slave that they have fight for the Colosseum. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and then that's when he's put into the test of like, there's this idea out there that whether we try to always, or you should always try to take responsibility for everything and understand what your actions have done to put you in whatever situation that you're in. But sometimes things happen and they just happen to you. Like, no matter what you could have done, you couldn't avoid it. Whether it's a car accident, or you get fired, or an opportunity is taken from you, or a loved one, or whatever it is. Like, things happen to us that have nothing to do with you. It just happened to you. And we have to understand that maybe we can't change the situation, but we can change our attitude about it, or the way we perceive it. And this happens with him in a sense that, I think at first he didn't want anything to do with it, but then he uses it to like rise up, right? Someone convinces him, essentially. I think it was the
Proxima.
Yeah, that's the master, right? Yeah, he uses it to kind of convince him. And obviously it's almost like a revenge trope, but he ends up using it to, help everyone else as well. Like it's not just for himself, but he's essentially saving people's lives. But yeah, just that's a deep stoic concept of, you can't always change your situation, but you can change your attitude.
Yeah, and it goes back to the idea of the one most reluctant to the throne is usually the one that is called to it and deserves the throne and is not there for any bad ideas or negative misinterpretations, as Commodus has his own ways and thoughts of how he wants to lead because he's driven by power, greed, and whatever other ideas he has. Whereas Maximus, originally he turns down the throne and saying that he does not want it. He just wants to go home to his wife and kids. And in that first scene that you were talking about with the wheat and the birds, I interpreted it as that was like his haven. That was his house. That's like his bigger picture idea was to go there. And he had been away from home for 3 years. So that was probably the only thing that was keeping him sane, is to like imagine, okay, I'm doing this for this reason. And not everyone has that, where they can be like, okay, I'm doing this because I want this in the future. And so it can be really hard to keep going and to put your best foot forward if you don't have something that you're looking forward to.
Yeah, we talked about this, the idea of leadership and being called to it from Dune, right? And yeah, I think it was the quote by the Leto, his dad.
The father.
He's saying something along the lines of, we're leaders. You don't want to be a leader, you're called to it. It's something you're called to do. And that was one of the main things that Marcus Aurelius had told Maximus. This is why you should do it, is because you don't want to do it. And I think we also talked about it, or maybe it was that same podcast, but just, it was just saying how, power can corrupt you, but even if it doesn't, it will bring those who are corrupted to you, because the corrupted are attracted to power. And that's kind of what Marcus Aurelius saw with his son, and wanted to put, again, Marcus Aurelius in charge because he had no desire for the power. And one of the things that you learn is that, everyone thinks having power is awesome, but really it's a huge burden and headache, because you're going to be forced to make decisions that affect so many people, and you'll never make anyone happy, and you will be blamed for everything. And so it is a fool's errand to think that it is something that you want, because if it is something that you want, you're going to be using it for the wrong reasons. Like, it should be like a heartache, a huge burden, something that you literally do not want to do. If you're doing it right, that's what it will feel like. If you think it's going to be awesome, you're going to be using it for all the wrong reasons. And that's what Marcus Aurelius saw in his son.
Yeah, and we can see that with the opening scenes, how he kind of, he does weird things with his sister and, pushes boundaries with her. And you can see that it's just he just has bad attributes. He's not an honorable man. And with what you were saying about, killing off the heirs, Lilith, the sister, and Maximus, they had a relationship prior to Maximus and his wife having their relationship and their kid. And it kind of foreshadows the idea that Lilith's son is Maximus's son. And that which kind of gives you hope for the future, because you can think that maybe the next movie might have the son who shows a great character, a great personality, and shows love for Maximus to become the next leader. But she goes through the idea that her son might be killed. And so she actually goes to Maximus and decides that she's going to help him with a coup. And she gets like I want to say he's like head of the church or something. I don't really remember.
He's the head of the Senate.
Head of the Senate. And she gets him on her side. And at first Maximus thinks that it's all fake and it's not real, and he doesn't want to trust her. But eventually she gets him on his side, she speaks to the Senate, and they orchestrate a coup with his loyal army that's still waiting for his lead. So that's kind of how that big war begins.
Right. Yeah, it's when he ends up finding out and ends up killing a bunch of people. Yeah. Yeah, and then going on to Commodus, there's that moment when Marcus Aurelius tells him he's not going to be king, and Commodus is like super sad about it. And he brings up the 4 Stoic virtues, which is like the foundation of Stoicism are these four virtues. And I actually have a coin to help me remember them. They're pretty sweet. But he makes the mention, he's like, you say these 4 virtues are important, and they're 4 virtues that I don't have. And he like tries to plead with him that he has these other ones. But the 4 virtues are courage, justice, wisdom, and temperance. And they're, from the Stoic standpoint, or Marcus Aurelius' viewpoint, these are, if you live your life by these 4 principles, you can have a good, awesome life. And I'll just explain them real quick, but courage is the ability to fight for the right thing, the balance between recklessness and cowardice, but right in the middle, right? The ability to fight for the right thing. Justice is to know the right thing, right? To not know the right thing, but to choose the right thing. You don't want to have courage for the wrong things, which you can't have.
Discernment.
Yeah, discernment, right? And then wisdom is the ability the want to learn and apply the right things. So you have to know the right things in order to choose the right things and to have courage for the right things. Because you don't want to be ignorant. And because if you're ignorant, you can also be led the wrong way. And then the other one is temperance, which another way to say that is balance or moderation, which means that to have the right amount of right things and to avoid the wrong things. And that these all tie in to each other, right? So you have to have courage to say no to the wrong things, to not do them, to do the right things, but not indulge. You have to, again, justice and wisdom are tied, because in order to do the right thing, you have to know the right thing. So they kind of like all interlope into each other. And I really think it's important to have like a guiding principle. They bring up, or people or society will bring up often that, we shouldn't just rely on our own. Like, we need some type of outer like guiding principle. You could even say something greater than yourself, and that's kind of also what shows in the movie as well, right? Like, when it was just about him, he just wanted to give up. But then when it became about like all the people to his right and left, and the people of Rome, then he was able to like rise up and do what was needed to be done. So, again, if you just rely on yourself, you'll most likely be in a survival mindset because, again, you're only worried about your own needs. And then we see that as well when it comes to family. You know, when you do stuff for your family, it just takes you to another level. And then, again, just having like some principles to guide you so that you can focus on the right things is extremely important. And I think these are pretty dope. 4 Stoic virtues. And these are all demonstrated in the movie in one way or another, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, another great quote from the movie is that he says, "What you do in this lifetime will echo in eternity forever." And that's the idea of legacy and living life beyond your own death. And in his sense, he does live beyond death because all of the people that were in love with him, his followers, his loyal compadres, they're all going to fight for his cause even after he passes. And we can see this with ideas of Buddhism and the idea of reincarnation, where we can go through cycles of samsara until we learn, or in a sense graduate from the mistakes that we've made time after time. And then also in religion, where some religions believe that the same ideas like reincarnation or higher ideas, like aligning yourself with these ideas, or at least allowing yourself to dwell on them, might give you hope or purpose in this lifetime and help you align with higher goals.
Yep. What we do in this life echoes in eternity. Yeah, this reminds me of something that we stressed on a lot in the Marine Corps. One of the quotes that we would use is, you know, the first time you die is, every man has 2 deaths. The first one is when you die. The second one is when people quit speaking of you. And this is an idea that you can live on through how you're remembered and how people speak of you. And you could take this not just in death, but in any time you leave somewhere. And so in the Marine Corps and in most of the military, you switch units. Like you'll move from unit to unit every couple of years, whether anywhere from 2 to 4 years, you'll go to a new unit. And so one thing we would try to focus on, or you should focus on, is like, you know, what would those people say when you left your unit? What do you want them to say about you? Do you want them to say that you were lazy, or in that you tried to skate out of everything? We call it skate, but it means like try to like breeze on by out of work. Or did, you know, were you a good friend? Were you helpful? Were you courageous? Were you dialed in? Did you have your shit together? And so, and that's like one way to like make decisions in the moment, you know, like if someone asks you to do something, or if there's something that you're supposed to do, it's like do it in a way that will last, right? Like do it in a way so that when you leave, people will miss that you're not there anymore. And even when you get out of the military, it's like when you get out, what will they say about you? Will you be missed, or will they be like, oh, good riddance kind of thing? And so you can apply that. We applied that to just, you know, that small area of being within the military, but you can apply that to anything of your life. You know, when you leave this world, are you going to be a good brother, a good sister, a good husband, a good father, a good family member, a good worker, a good co-worker, a good boss? Like, what will people say about you when you pass? And if you think about those things, it can help you be mindful of the present actions that you're taking.
For sure. Just being a positive influence will change so much for you in your day-to-day.
Yeah, and then another thing I wanted to get to is, because we were still on that part about Commodus, one of the things it shows, there was kind of like portrayed, there's 2 like major things there. One of them being external validation and how it can cause you a lot of suffering. So essentially Commodus was vying for his father's approval, and that he really had to have this title of emperor, and because he didn't get it, he became super sad, and obviously led him to kill his dad and become a tyrant. But and then also him not winning over the people like Maximus was driving him crazy. But just this idea that if you base your happiness on outside needs, it's always going to cause you suffering. And most likely you will then cause others suffering. And an idea that if you have to have this thing for your happiness, you will plot against those who have it. You'll be jealous of those who have it. You will fight and plot against people who might take it away from you. And so you'll always like be in this fear of losing it, and you'll do whatever it takes to get it and or keep it. And so, and you can apply this to anything, whether it's an item, a title, an emotion, a drug, whatever it is. If you rely on that thing to feel happiness or contentment, then it will inevitably destroy you. And that was like one of the big tie-ins with Commodus. And the other thing I wanted to say too is like that's also the classic story of Cain and Abel. They're not Maximus and Commodus are not necessarily brothers, but in Marcus's eyes they were. And you can see how Marcus led a just life and did everything the right way, was super present, and which would be Abel from the stories. And then Cain would be Commodus, who was more worried about himself and didn't do anything with honor or, what's the word? Virtue. And it ended up, his jealousy led him to kill his dad, attempt to kill Maximus. And so, again, that's like a classic story, an ageless story of how jealousy can lead you to do the most terrible of things and lead you
astray.
Down a crazy path. Yeah, astray. Good word.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up Cain and Abel, but
too bad, Tori.
It's
too
fine.
bad.
Yeah.
Well, let me just list off all the things I was gonna bring up since. Yeah. Well, you stole my leadership one. I was gonna bring up the one about leadership. One that me and you talked about. Because we follow a YouTube page called After School, and it brings up how. And it's so funny because we watched Gladiator, and then like the next day or two, After School came out with a whole thing about the Roman Empire and how it ended up falling apart, and how there's this cycle of civilization. Yeah. And we noticed it instantly, like the connection. Mm-hmm. Even though he doesn't bring up in this clip is essentially like illustrated art of deep concepts. At no point do they bring up the movie Gladiator, but that is exactly one of the plot points in Gladiator. Like, again, it's so trippy. Like, not only is there's like multiple stories going on all at the same time that all tie together, but this whole time that Maximus Decimus Meridius is fighting as a gladiator, the Senate and the Emperor are in a war for pretty much control. So Marcus Aurelius's time, I think he reinstated the old rule of succession where it goes to a person by birth. And they had gotten away from that, and then he put it back. And some people will note that Marcus Aurelius's death is like the downfall of
the Golden Age.
The Golden Ages. And because at the time before that, Rome did kind of build up a complex system of how to run things. And to where they had a senate, they had an emperor, and it was also a little bit democratic, and so they were all three were supposed to like work together to keep the peace. And then Commodus ends up trying to get as much power as he can, and just uses it to essentially indulge himself. And it's funny, like when you really look into it too, if you really look into Commodus, you can't blame him for the way he was feeling, because Commodus was forced to go to battle since he was a kid and like learn to be an emperor. So he had like no real childhood and was just destined to become the emperor, and then has it taken away from him. Now in real life history, he does end up getting it, but he just gives the power away to other people and then just parties the whole time. So it's back to that little side tangent of just this idea that when you're born into wealth and you don't earn it yourself, you're more than likely going to just get rid of it. And that's a hard concept to imagine, but you see it a lot when, like, an easy way to imagine it if you don't have a lot of money is eating healthy. It's so hard to eat healthy when we're constantly surrounded by bad food, right? Even if you're not surrounded by bad food, it's like if you don't have time to cook healthy meals, it's just so tempting to get fast food because it's everywhere, open 24/7. It's cheap. And so it's like really difficult to make healthy choices all the time because you have those options. Now imagine you had that with money and you didn't even earn it. It's just you have an endless source of income. How do you not just buy everything you want, boss everybody around? It's just like when you just have the power and you just have the money, it is damn near impossible to figure out how to transcend that. I think it's like one of the main quotes in the Bible is like, it's easier to thread a camel through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to get into heaven. And it's just because your ability to make the right choice is kind of dependent on your ability to need to make the right choices almost. But anyway, back to the original thing about the mob and how political systems break down over time. And yeah, there's just this battle between the Senate and the emperor over who controls Rome and who's going to do the things it needs. And I actually have the quote pulled up, but it says, Rome is the mob. Conjure magic for them and they'll be distracted. Take away their freedom and still they'll roar. The beating heart of Rome is not the marble of the Senate, it's the sand of the Colosseum. And it's just, they're essentially talking about how leaders can use superficial means like entertainment or propaganda to control the masses. And if you have any clue about what's going on in today's world, like that's exactly what we see today, where it's like these crazy things are happening in our political system, but it's like, hey, Kim Kardashian, blah, blah, blah. Hey, this, blah, blah, blah. Like, what, Diddy this, Diddy that, or, whatever stupid thing they're feeding us on the news. Or, you pull up certain news channels and it's like, there's constant threat of war all the time. Like constant bombings, constant this, constant that. Like you could pull up, Fox or CNN and it'll be like, the world's ending. Like every day you pull it up and they'll try to convince you that the world's ending. And they're essentially just trying to keep your attention off of what is really going on, and if you don't know why they would do that or wouldn't do that, it's like these people don't want us to examine them. They don't want you to examine them. There's a reason that these politicians come in making $150,000 a year, and the next thing you know, they're millionaires. And so it's just so trippy, that correlation. Like you see it in both ends.
Yeah, and that's one thing that Maximus didn't display, is because he came from a humble background and he earned all of the wisdom and rankings along the way, and he's able to empathize with the people, and he is more for the people than for any thing put in place for control. And so that's one reason why the Rome did fall, is because it kept the gap between the people and the power just kept growing, and the people just kept getting more and more resentful. And then eventually civil war happens, and then no one believes in the government, and then
they were also sending out all the men to go fight needless wars out on the outskirts, and they didn't have the money to pay them. So now you have most of the people in Rome were not actual like Roman citizens, like men. They were all being sent out to war. So then all you have is essentially like refugees, women and children, like people who can't fight, and they don't have no food or anyone to look after them.
So they're poverty, they're sick, they don't have health care. It's a bunch of elder people.
And it's all the older people not fighting who are forcing all the young people to fight. Yeah. And I mean, it's just this idea that it's just this parallel of how society can prioritize entertainment and instant gratification over deeper values. It's like they'd rather, I think the joke was they'd rather like be in Colosseum and drink themselves silly and watch people kill each other than focus on like how to make Rome better. And again, you see that today. It's like so crazy to think about, but it's hard, and it's hard not to be like that. Like we're all so caught up in our own lives trying to survive. To think about the bigger picture is so difficult because we're all in a survival mindset, especially with inflation these days. But yeah, the parallels are absolutely insane. That movie was back in the 2000s. It was literally over 20 years old. You go watch that movie today and you're just like, dang.
Yeah, and the concepts were happening way before then, and they're continuing to happen even now. So
yeah.
It's a timeless movie.
For real. What else do we got here, Toby? I think that's pretty much all that I got.
Yeah, me too.
Let me see. There's this. I do want to talk about that one quote because every time we say his name, Maximus Decimus Meridius, there's that super viral quote, and essentially goes, "My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the armies of the North, general of the Felix legions, loyal servant to the true emperor Marcus Aurelius, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next." It's like just one of the best freaking quotes out there. And the way he says it with so much passion, and the emperor's look on his face, because at that time he believed he was dead, because no one told him that he got away. They just said he was dead. Like they sent him out there and then they never heard back. And at this time, Maximus fights his way all the way back and ends up becoming a champion of the people. And the emperor goes down there to see who the champion is because he's wearing a helmet, and he's like, identify yourself. And he has his back turned to him, and he takes off his helmet, and it says this like super badass quote, and the emperor's like, it's like so sweet. And it went super viral on Instagram, where it's like when the Starbucks person asks who your name is, like just like little silly ones like that. But yeah, that was an awesome part. And then another one is he tells Commodus the time for honoring yourself will soon be at an end. And pretty much just like reminding him that, you know, you continue to stroke your ego and think it's all about you, and you will be humbled. And that's been true in my own life. It's like every time I get cocky, something humbles the shit out of me. So it's like we all have to have an ego. Your ego is essentially your psychological construct for navigating your way through reality. So you need it, but if you let it get so much confidence that you know this world, that you know it better than others, reality will humble you. So you want to use it to navigate, right? You need an ego to want to get up and do things for yourself. You know, you have to have an identity so that you can go out and talk to people and conversate and get jobs and pay the bills. You need that. But the second that you think that your ego somehow and when I say ego, I mean like identity is somehow better than other people's, is going to bite you in the ass. There is a thing called karma, and it is real. Like, if you haven't experienced karma, then you're not paying attention. It's like, and then obviously that's like a foreshadowing of what's to come. And they're almost in any show you can see that they're, someone thinks that they have ultimate control. They abuse it, and someone reminds them that, hey, you're treading a dark path, and then it comes to fruition.
The downfall was inevitable.
Yes.
I forget. There's like another movie where he's like, "I'm like the plague, and I'm coming for you," or something like that. And it just foreshadows the downfall of the unrightful leader.
Yeah. Back to one of the, we were talking about earlier too, about how we control our situation and how we control our mind. It goes back to death as well. But it was this idea that ultimately, this is said by Proximo, but ultimately we are all dead men. Sadly, we cannot choose how, but we can decide how we meet that end. And yeah, it's like, if you know you're going to die, I would hope that I could meet it like being happy with the life that I lived. That's the best thing that you can do. I think, and there's another one too. I think it's the same movie, but he says, death smile. Yep, it's by Maximus. Death smiles at us all. All a man can do is smile back. And that's just to mean that, live your life in a way that if death does come for you, you'd be like, I did what I came here to do. Or, I lived my life the right way kind of idea. You don't want to meet death like panicking, wishing you had done something you shouldn't do. Or had done something you didn't do. Or hadn't done something you did.
Mm-hmm. And even if you have, you can reconcile the mistakes that you've made rather than continue down the path of destruction. And that's like the concept of rebirth during your lifetime, that we can all be reborn at any moment and any time, and that death and birth aren't necessarily the beginning and the end, that you can always be renewed in this lifetime, and you can always make a different choice.
Yeah. There's this one cool story about a guy who lived a very hedonistic lifestyle, partied and, I think he abused a lot of wine and alcohol and just didn't do anything. And then when he was in his mid 40s, decided to turn his life around and woke up early every day and was very stoic and made a bunch of huge contributions to life. But he didn't start until he was in his late 40s, almost 50s, and then just spent the rest of his time being disciplined, waking up early, studying, do the things he was supposed to do, and he was able to make huge contributions. And so, not to say you can't change it after you're 50, but obviously the sooner the better. But yeah, there's so many deep things in this movie. The only one I want to really touch on one more time is just service, right? So Maximus was the right leader because he was trying to do things for the people, and Commodus was there to do things for himself. In the meetings with the Senate, he just didn't care about anything that was going on and only wanted to do things that he wanted to do. And he wanted to have the big fights in the Colosseum to honor himself, and it was always about him. Whereas Maximus was always worried about his family or what's right for his men, his people. So we kind of did touch on it a little bit about you want to do things you want to do things that are greater for yourself, have a purpose greater than yourself, and that will lead you to be able to have the capability to do more. But that's one of the main themes of the movie too. But yeah, everything that we talked about, it's the nature of legacy, immortality, justice, moral integrity, freedom, slavery, leadership, the corruption of power, revenge. There's so many different topics in this movie. And we're going to go watch the second one tonight, and I've heard good things, so I'm super stoked about it.
Yeah, 24 years later, the second one comes out.
Yep. Anything else? All right. Hey, that is the end of this episode. We appreciate y'all tuning in. If there's anything that we missed or something that you thought was super awesome about the movie or a deep concept that you picked up on, please let us know. Send us a DM. Let us know in the comments, and we'd love to bring it up or talk to you about it, whatever it may be. We appreciate y'all. Thank you so much.